Welcome back to Zaka Stokvel Insights. We're continuing our discussion on formalizing and growing young Stokvels. Still with me in studio to provide expert advice on potential future plans for Trust the Process and how they can successfully transition to formal financial opportunities is Thabiso Masudubele. Thabiso, if Trust the Process wants to attract external or even foreign investments, let's not just limit things here. How do you coach them to pitch themselves well?
I think it's about being organized. We spoke about discipline, but it's also very important for groups to be organized. And the reason we speak about groups being organized is, it has to do largely with things like record keeping. So we encourage groups to look at themselves as companies. So if you want to get into business, you've got to register a company. So you've got to be organized. There are issues of compliance. There are issues of making sure that your paperwork and admin is in order. And so that's probably one of the first places to look at, where you've got a group and you need to know where your records are, your financial statements, the minutes, the resolutions, all the decisions that have been taken so that you can account for these things. And in starting a business, some of these things are requirements when engaging with institutions and you're trying to raise financing. However, we also know that Stokvels as groups themselves do have resources in savings accounts and so on. So if they start looking at themselves as businesses, they can then, before going to funders, say, we do have some seed capital for the business that we'd like to start. And so they don't go to potential investors from a zero base where they've got no money at all. So they engage with a potential investor and say, we've also got skin in the game. This is the money that we're bringing to the table as a group, as a business. But to get to that point, it's important for groups to make sure that they've got a professional administration service. Now, this is where we then also help Stokvels with having that professional administration in place, where if you ask, there's 750 Rand that was withdrawn in August, what was that for? Something that prevents fights but also helps with record keeping, financial and otherwise, is that we then track the minutes of the meetings that were prior to that, where everyone agreed that we're going to withdraw this money for this amount of money. So that issue of organization becomes important. So Stokvels also, in looking at themselves as businesses, again, it comes down to what business are you? What business opportunity have you identified? We then help them acquire assets that they require for that business. By way of example, we engage with a lot of burial societies who we've helped get into business, where they said, we are a burial society. We've noticed that there are huge costs in renting catering equipment, for instance. So they said, we want to start a catering business as a burial society. So they then register the company, get the necessary bank accounts and so on. But we then say, how much does that equipment cost? So that equipment, again, costs X amount of money. And they'd like to purchase it at the end of the year or after 12 months, whatever the case is. Once that package of equipment is there, whether it's your tent, gas stove, chairs, all the things that are required, you then have a package that has a cost to it. Again, you work backwards. You say, this is the amount of money that you need to save. That discipline kicks in again at the end of the year. Once they've saved through our service, we then say, here's the equipment that you want to start, and here's a template of a business plan where you've identified opportunities and where different markets might be and so on. And that, through that organization and discipline, Stokvels then move from being Stokvels that year on year are planning, say, yeah, we want to start a business, but they never do. 5 years later, no, we wanted to start a catering business, and they never have. The difference is, again, in discipline and being organized, and then that way they're able to reach their goals.
How do you see Trust the Process expanding themselves? Would it be a good idea to register as an NPO?
Well, the first thing is that if you want to register as an NPO, remember, as an NPO, you're a non-profit organization. Yes. So I'd like to imagine that a lot of people want to work on the basis of profit. So they should first then agree and say, the things that we do, let's agree, let's be clear with everyone that we're starting this business not as a charity, as it were, but to generate profits. And this is what we want to do with these profits, whether to distribute them amongst ourselves or to grow the business that we would have started. So again, it comes back to being very organized and being very clear as a group. I think the challenge with Stokvels is that you've got different opinions. So you might have 20 opinions. So it's very easy to take it for granted that if the two of us agree that this is our vision, this is our goal, everyone else agrees. But you might find that there are 3 people who are thinking, no man, with the money that we make, we can pay for school fees for less fortunate children and that sort of thing. So those details aren't properly explored and, unpacked amongst the members. So it's vitally important that every member of the group is on the same page with regards to why they want to do what they want to do and how they're going to achieve those goals that they've set for themselves. So the group first needs to sit and be absolutely 120% sure that this is what we want to do. Once that's been established, the rest of the process becomes an admin process to then say, do we go the NPO route, do we go the CIPC route, or whichever route we take towards the goal that we've set for ourselves.
Currently, there are a group of 5 members, and they do want to grow and increase their membership. But what marketing strategies or ways in which they can put themselves out there to attract those numbers?
Yeah, so there are different ways that things can be done. What we always say with Stokvels is that one of the better ways of marketing yourself over and above, and they don't have a budget to create ads on social media and those sorts of things. So one of the easiest things to do is, once you are an organized group yourself and people outside the group begin to see that you set a goal for yourself and you've actually achieved it, people get drawn to that. So your own successes will attract people. So it's always to say, instead of looking out and saying our goal is to attract people, rather let your focus be ensuring that you reach your goals. And in so doing, people are always observing. Within a community, each of the 5 members has a friend, has a relative who's observing how they work. So if a member comes back and says, at the beginning of the year, our goal was to do X, Y, Z. And then in December, they say, we actually achieved doing this and this. I'm able to do this because of the plan that we had through our Stokvel. That word of mouth actually carries a lot of weight, because what then that does is people who are observing the successes of the group become interested and then want to join, because people want to join something that will add value to their lives and something that's organized. So no one wants to get onto a bus that's fairly disorganized and doesn't achieve its goals. So our guidance to them is to say, make sure that while there are 5 of you, it's easier to manage. Make sure that you've got a solid structure, and that solid structure also makes provision for when you do grow. Because remember, the dynamics will change. It's easier to manage 5 people. It becomes a bit trickier when there's 20 people, when there's 30 people. So a lot of Stokvels talk about we want to grow the number of membership that we have without considering the implications of that growth. So if it's 5 people, it's easy to arrange a meeting for 5 people. We're 5 friends. We work, we live fairly close to each other. But once there's 20 people, then everyone has to come. The logistical arrangements have to change. How you select the chairperson has to change. How you select the treasurer has to change. So all of these things, in planning your growth, you also have to start thinking about those things. And that's where we engage with groups to say, as you grow, the first place to start is to make sure that you deliver on the basics that you've set out yourselves, and people will then realize that it's worth joining that particular group.
And this is actually such a good story to tell, especially when, putting out a positive message for young entrepreneurs out there. 5 members coming together with the sole purpose of ensuring that their businesses still survive. Well, that's all from us for now. And if your Stokvel or Burial Society needs more insight on today's discussion or any other topic you'd like us to explore, please don't hesitate to reach us on the contact details on the screen below. Until next week, goodbye. This program is brought to you by Tyvision Media, helping Stokvels and burial societies reach their goals.